do you have good attention to detail? And I was like, yeah. And then she was like, well, clearly you don't. I was like,
oh no,
we've called it a lie.
Welcome back to The Law Process.
With me, Jay.
And me, Grace.
Today we have a very, very special guest. We have Simran!
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know who Simran is a trainee solicitor at a top 20 UK law firm, right? Yeah. And she had not one, not two, but 3 training contract offers.
Oh, you guys got me.
No, honestly, she's also a YouTuber or a legal influencer. So yeah, we're really excited to have you on our channel today.
Oh no, thank you. I really appreciate it, and thanks for the kind words as well. my ego's definitely gone a bit bigger.
So you might have noticed that our setup today is a little bit different. Mm-hmm. We have the professional cameras, the professional lighting, the studio feel. We are at London Media Lounge. London Media Lounge does podcast recordings. They have a green screen room. They do voiceovers. The setup today has been A1, phenomenal. So if you are recording something and want a space, then this is where you need to be at. Or if you need help editing, then you can also hit them up.
Yeah, and we'll put the link in the description box below.
Yeah.
So, Simran, can you just give us a brief introduction as to what you do, how did you get to where you are in your career, and just let people know you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so as you said, I'm a trainee solicitor for a UK top 20 law firm. I went to the University of Bristol, studied law there in 2015, and realised I didn't like it at all. Right. I actually had friends who weren't law students, they were accountancy students or economic students, and they were doing grad jobs at EY or PwC, Big Four essentially, so I thought let me apply there as well. Right. I ended up getting a internship in tax at EY, and I did my internship there in the summer of 2017, so that was at the end of my second year of university. And I was offered the grad job, and I think from that it made me realise that I really like working in London. So I like that hustle bustle, like corporate life, walking to the city feeling like you made it in life. I love that. So I wanted that in my career, so that's a really positive thing that came out of it. Went back to university my third year in Bristol, and I managed to pick out modules that I really liked, like corporate law simulation, and I think there was another one on company law, etc.
Right.
All topics that were quite, I guess, practical in their approach. So then I applied to PwC and got my vacation scheme then. Okay. And I think in PwC I actually thought that because I've got my vacation scheme, I've secured the bag. I don't need to work hard. I've got it. Like, why would they not choose me? But they did not choose me.
We've all been there in time.
It's so peak when you get that rejection call. But honestly, I will never forget that feeling when my smile just dropped from my face. It was
I can relate so hard that I was just like,
oh god, so back at square one, and I had that grad job offer from EY, so I thought why not try that, be an accountant. Did it for 2 weeks, absolutely hated it. It was the worst 2 weeks of my life. I quit after 2 weeks, became a paralegal, and that involved having to move to a completely new city, kind of by myself, not knowing anyone. And paralegal there for a bit, and during that time I applied for training contracts as well. Managed to secure 2 vacation schemes the summer after. And I converted both of those into training contracts and got a direct training contract offer too. Then I got my TC offers. I accepted it for Womble Bontington, and I did my LPC with them as well, so they funded for it. I didn't want to fund my own LPC because of how expensive it is. And then now I'm in my second seat of my training contract. My first seat was construction, and I'm now in real estate.
So now that you've given us a bit of an introduction into yourself, do you want to give us 2 fun facts about yourself, just so our viewers can also get a bit of an insight into who you are as a person outside of legal and law and all that sort of stuff?
Sure. One thing is I play the drums. I don't know whether a lot of people know that.
I love that. I actually don't know anyone that plays the drums. That is such a cool like skill to have.
What's your second fun fact?
I can say, like the advert, like Foster's, like the bit.
Oh yeah. Yes.
I can say exactly what, they've got their kind of ring line thing. Slogan. Foster's good cool. Yeah. I can say it in Australia.
You know what's gonna come next. Now you have to say it.
This might be bad because I haven't done it in a while.
Okay.
But it's like Foster's. Good call. I don't know why. That's the only Australian thing I could say.
Actually, the Australian accent isn't an easy one to maintain at all.
At all.
So since we have Simran here, and as we've mentioned, she secured 3 training contracts, 2 vacation schemes. We want to find out a little bit more about how she managed to accomplish that and what skills she can share with all of you so that you can go on to accomplish greatness too.
Yeah.
So we'll start off with the vacation schemes, and then we'll go into the training contract application, dealing with rejection, successes, all of that good stuff.
Yeah.
So we actually have a vacation scheme application cycle that is coming up. So if you haven't started applying, look into that. So what would you say that helped you in applying for vacation schemes? When you look back, what do you think you did that made you successful in that process?
Yeah, I mean, if I look back this time, was it maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago now? God, seems ages ago. But what I did during this period, exactly in this month, was actually split my workload up. Applying to TSC applications and vacation scheme applications, you can easily get very overwhelmed in terms of where the hell do I even start?
Yeah.
And for me, I was very much the kind of person where I just said, okay, if I start on one thing, then the other things will kind of fall into place.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually started off with going on Law Careers Net, and they've got the separate tabs for TC deadlines and vacation scheme deadlines.
Yeah.
And what I did was I just wrote it all down, the firms that I was interested in applying to briefly, without having researched them, but the ones that I thought, okay, you know what, I've heard of them, I might be probably interested in applying to them. I wrote them down, and I just noted down which deadlines were when, and when you had to submit applications to, etc. So that's the first thing that I did, just noting down the deadlines and just, making a start. The second thing I did actually was watching YouTube videos.
Oh, okay.
So I think that kind of made me want to start my own in a way, because I learned a lot from YouTubers like Chrissy Wolf, like Lauren Border. And I think Thomson Reuters, they had their own YouTube channel. I don't think they make videos at the moment.
Yeah.
Even Law Careers Net, actually, they had videos that I watched back in the day that really, really helped me out. And I just really noted down what these people were saying in terms of tips. This was when I was in my kind of last cycle of TC vacation schemes applications. So obviously I'd faced loads of rejections during university before, and I just didn't know where I was going wrong. And when I watched these videos, it just made me think, oh wow, like it's changed my approach, because it just really made me realise I wasn't doing this before. Oh my god, I wasn't doing this either. So going into the cycle knowing those things really helped me out. And then that's the second thing that I did. Third thing that I did was commercial awareness. So I think commercial awareness really let me down in my previous cycle. So I didn't want to be that person who just researched a news article the day before the interview. So I kind of set a routine of how I was going to get my commercial awareness. So that meant, for example, subscribing to commercial awareness kind of email subscriptions. So it just comes into your mailbox. Another thing that I really recommend is LinkedIn. They have their daily rundowns. So these were all things that I was just essentially finding out and just making myself ready for. So when the cycle hits, and obviously when you get busier with work and stuff as well, at least you've got these basic foundations there. So then I just moved on to just researching essentially. I did it in a very kind of methodical approach. People ask me, should I apply for vacation schemes or should I apply for direct training contracts? My answer to that personally, from my own personal experience and what worked for me, was do both. So do your vacation schemes until the end of January, until that deadline, and then TC applications from then on. So I think that cycle just works out quite well.
No, that's good. So I think there's 3 sort of takeaways there. The first is knowing the deadlines. The second being to learn from other people, whether that be on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and things like that, and then build up your commercial awareness. With your commercial awareness, you said that you did subscriptions and subscribed to certain newsletters. What newsletters were there?
If I can remember the names. I mean, there's a new one that I've subscribed to recently. I didn't use them in the training contract process because I think they're relatively quite new, but they're called Legit.
Okay.
So they send through quite fun stories, to be fair, like ones that are actually really interesting. Little Law was a website that I used religiously when I was in the process. And they might have an email subscription, I'm not quite sure. They do, yes. That's another one. I mean, there's quite a few commercial awareness podcasts now, which I didn't have back in my day.
Back in our day.
The ones that I've heard of that are really good are Wake Up to Money. I've heard really good things about that one. And obviously there's The Economist, Financial Times, they've got their own podcast as well.
Speaking of commercial awareness, actually, there's also a subscription by a guy called Peter Watson.
Oh yes, Watson Daily,
Yeah, so I used to find this stuff quite useful. So just in case anybody wants to know.
I've heard good things about him as well.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So we know that you've had vacation schemes. Some have turned into a TC and some haven't. So what did you do differently in the ones that turned into TC and one that didn't?
Yeah, sure. So the one where I was at PwC, oh god, I was so cocky. Without being cocky, I wasn't the vacation schemer who went around saying, oh, I'm that person. I was never like that, but I think inwardly I was very cocky.
You were like that, okay.
I kind of just thought, yeah, don't worry, I've got this.
Right, okay.
And I think that really reflected in my attitude in the firm as well. So when I look back, I remember there were times where I was on my phone at my desk, and it's just a bit like, well, that doesn't really create a good impression.
Right, okay.
And it came in my feedback, actually, they said their feedback admittedly was a bit woolly, but I actually realised what they meant a whole year afterwards, when I realised, this is where I actually went wrong, because their feedback was, we don't think you're a right fit in terms of culture for the firm.
Right.
I didn't really know what that meant.
Okay.
What is that supposed to mean? What is the culture? And, is it more of like a personality thing? And the year after, that's when I realised that's why I got rejected.
Really?
Because I just was not ready to be a trainee solicitor at that stage. I was too immature. And even things like the socials and stuff, I was so on it for the socials. I put so much effort into those. Whereas the actual work, I think I didn't put as much effort into it.
Right, okay.
So there were probably some tasks where my attention to detail was probably lacking as well.
Right, okay.
Whereas on my second vacation scheme that I had at the firm that I'm now training at, I was so on it in terms of creating connections, really going out of my way to help my team out, but also help other teams out.
Okay, that's good.
And for example, one thing that I did at the end of my vacation scheme was I made a list of all the people that I worked with and tasks that I did, set it out on a table and gave it to grad recruitment. And I said I didn't have to do this, but I just thought it'd be easier to help you gather feedback from every person that I've spoken to. And I did not take initiative in my first vacation scheme. I very much just did what I was told. So if I had an interview, okay, cool, I'll attend that. And to be fair, the interviews I did quite well in. My final TC interview for Wombles, I thought I'd absolutely flopped that because I got such difficult questions. But at the end of it, they just really saw my passion and drive. And I didn't have that passion and drive in PwC because I was very laid back then. And then the same attitude I translated to the second firm that I did my vacation scheme at. They're called Fox Williams. Same thing then. The first thing actually that created a really good impression in that firm was my buddy was supposed to show me around my team and introduce me to everyone on the first day, but he had to go to court suddenly. So then I was sat there in the office thinking, okay, I can either introduce myself or just wait for people to come to me. And I did the former. So I knocked on everyone's doors and said hi. And that came back in my feedback, and they said that's so confident of you to do that, to knock on people's doors and actually introduce yourself. So that's one thing as well. They really want you to be keen and eager, and that's one thing I just didn't have in my first vacation scheme.
So you have to be really proactive.
100%. Your face should be hurting at the end of every day from smiling. Otherwise you've not done it.
Definitely.
So for those people that are just diving straight into the training contract applications and skipping the vacation scheme route, what are 3 tips that you would give to write a successful training contract application?
No, sure. The first thing to look out for when writing applications is actually understanding the question, what's being asked of you. Sometimes law firms phrase things in different ways, which means that you might think you know the question when actually it means something else. So for example, the question of why do you want to be a solicitor versus why you want to be a commercial solicitor, those are 2 different questions in my opinion. So for the former, you would talk more about the kind of transferable skills that a solicitor generally has, whether they are in high street law firms or commercial law firms. Whereas commercial solicitor, that to me suggests that you have to bring in a bit of commercial awareness into your answer. So those 2 questions would be answered in completely different ways. So that's the first thing, actually understand what's being asked of you. I used to highlight the sections that I felt was most important, just to remind myself throughout when I was writing that I didn't lose track of what was the most important thing that they were asking about here. And actually understanding why the law firm wants this answer out of you. What do they want to gather? What do they want to find from this answer? Secondly, I would talk about the why and the how. So what I mean by that is, when you are writing a statement in your application, so for example, I am interested in intellectual property, which aligns to your firm or whatever, you know, just talking about why you're interested in a firm. Talk about why you're interested in intellectual property. So how can you show that? Actually talking about an experience. So I'm interested in intellectual property because it challenges me. I attended an intellectual property workshop on this date that allowed me to blah blah blah. And then the final line can kind of relate it back to the firm. This aligns to your practice area. So that was the kind of, I guess, basic structure-ish. Obviously you can amend it, tailor it to how you want, but I always made sure that I provided backing and evidence of why I'm interested in something and how I can show the firm that I'm interested in it, rather than just saying, oh, I'm interested in it because it's technical. But even the why, it's quite, even me saying because it's a technical area of law, that's too vague. You need to provide a bit more detail into that as well. Third tip is always linking it back to yourself. Of course, the law firm is, they know what their stats are. They know, for example, they might be the best law firm in this particular area. You don't need to regurgitate that to them, but you need to talk about why it's important to you. So always linking it back to yourself is another tip that I have. Oh, spelling and grammar as well, just do not forget that.
Definitely. That's key. When it comes to training contract applications and vacation scheme applications, we feel like one of the most important things is actually picking and choosing the right law firm. So how would you say that you pick the right law firms for you?
I think you've got to put yourself out there. I don't think you can find out about a company's culture just from your laptop. Because a lot of the time firms do say the same thing. If I went to networking events more during university and after university, I would have actually had more of a feel. So that's one thing that I wish I did more, that I think would give me more of an insight into a company's culture. When I was in the process itself, obviously I hadn't really been to these networking events as much. So the way I managed to kind of find out was actually during paralegal experience, and obviously I'm not saying that being a paralegal is the only way you can get used to a company's culture. This is just the way that I did it. And I guess because my first paralegal job was in a national firm, it really made me realise that sometimes you don't have to go for the big ticket law firms in order to get good experience. Sometimes you can get in a smaller team, you can be in a smaller team and you get more responsibility than someone who may be in a larger team. So that's actually something that really helped decrease the number of firms that I applied to, because I ended up applying to firms that had small trainee intakes because I realised that's what I wanted, and that's what I went for. So I think that's kind of what helped. I would recommend going via a categories approach, essentially. So different law firms obviously have their different categories. You get the big four, you get Magic Circle, you get your American firms, but you also get American firms that have British culture in terms of national culture. That's what my firm's like. They've got the transatlantic label, but their culture is far from Kirkland and Ellis or Latham and Watkins. It's a lot more chilled in my firm, with more of emphasis on work-life balance than what I've heard from stories of like those kind of firms. And for those people, they might like that kind of culture. They might want to work at Latham and Watkins or Kirkland Ellis, etc. But for me, I actually just want to have a bit more of like a work-life balance, and
So we hear firms talk about it, people talk about it all the time, about making sure that you're being yourself, whether it's when you're at the firm, when you're writing your application. But I think due to the questions that are asked and due to the fact that you're going into a big corporate world that you've never been in before, a lot of people find it really hard to convey their personality. How did you manage to let your personality come across and really be unique within your application process?
I think first things first is I actually initially asked some of my friends for their applications when they were successful for certain law firms, but I realised that that didn't help me, because I was writing or looking at their style and thinking I should write like that. So I absolutely fully eliminated that from my mind and just wrote simply like myself. Obviously not fully like myself in terms of writing slang or you can't do that to that extent, but just really eliminating words that I felt like I was putting in for the sake of it to try and act professional or corporate. So that's the first thing I did. I just stripped it down to basics essentially. And the second thing that I did in terms of making it more me is actually understanding who I am as a person. I know that sounds so deep, like going to like Thailand on my gap year and finding myself, but really just understanding what makes me, and for example, when it comes to questions like law firms ask, what's your proudest achievement, what's your weakness, I think it's important to be open and honest about those kind of questions. So that's something that I definitely just translated into my applications. I think when it comes to things like humour, I tried to incorporate that a little bit into applications as well. But I had to be careful with it, because you can't kind of just write something and then write in practice. So I remember, I can't think of something in my head, but I remember writing things that align to my kind of sense of humour style, which is quite witty in a sense. But I had to be really careful with that. So that's only something that I did on certain occasions. But I also made sure that I used examples that really related to who I was as a person. So one firm that I applied to, an American law firm, I saw on their website that they'd helped Sikh individuals. So I'm like, my religion, I'm a Sikh, and they helped people in the army who are Sikh have turbans in the US. And I incorporated that into my answers to why I'm applying to the firm. So it was something that is very close to who I am and my identity, and then bringing that in really helped. So I think it's important as well to sometimes understand what you're actually genuinely really passionate about, because it's so easy to write about something that you're passionate. You can talk for days about it. So I think that's one thing that really kind of helps in showing your personality in applications as well.
So what is the one thing that you would say that you did really well in your training contract applications that led you to your success, and was the one thing you would say that you could have improved on in your applications?
One thing that I think I did that was really successful in my applications was my researching. And this isn't something that happened overnight. I was just meticulous in how I researched, because I didn't attend networking events open days when I was at university. I was like, this is all I've got, my laptop and just these sources. And I just honestly just went through these sources, all these different types of sources that you can get, Law Careers Net, the firm's website, Legal Cheat, all those different places, a chamber student, and actually picked apart the pieces of information that I felt was useful to me, particularly on the firm's website. The firm's website is an absolute goldmine in my opinion. That's exactly what the firm wants you to see, and that's what they're proud of, so you should use that, but not to the extent where you're just regurgitating it in your applications. But what I did was I really thought about, okay, this is interesting, whatever I found on the website, but why am I interested, and how am I interested? How can I show the firm I'm interested in it? So linking it back to the why and the how. So not only during when I was researching, I wasn't just researching for the hell of it. I was researching, thinking about how I could then use that in my applications and write about it. So just taking it that next step, rather than just researching and writing down facts, just really relating everything that I researched back to myself. So that's one thing that I think that really helped me in my applications. And the thing that I wish I knew sooner, and I wish if I look back, I would have improved on pretty much straight away, is copying and pasting. It does not work. It just doesn't. I tried to do shortcuts. It just failed miserably. I mean, it got to the point where even in an interview for an agency that I was applying to as a paralegal, they said she read a part of my application out in front of me, and I essentially mentioned, I think, a firm's name, not their name. So I was like, I'm really interested in applying to X. And that X was the wrong firm. Because I copy and pasted it. And she said, the question before that she asked me is, do you have good attention to detail? And I was like, yeah. And then she was like, well, clearly you don't. I was like, we've called it a lie. But actually, building on that story, I managed to still get through to the next stage.
How did you manage to do that? I want to know how you managed to
they essentially, when she said that in the interview, I froze for a little bit, obviously understanding it's quite a shocking thing to go through. But I just owned up to it. I was like, I did copy and paste, and I said I'm not going to make any excuse for it. I did, and obviously now I've been in this situation, I'm not going to do it again. And in my feedback, it came back as, you didn't get defensive, you didn't make excuses, you owned up to it, and you just kept it moving. And I was like, I did. So they want that from a trainee. They want someone who can recover from when you make mistakes.
Take accountability.
Because mistakes do happen. You can't give us perfect training. I've made a mistake in my first seat already.
No one's perfect. Mistakes are going to be made, and I feel like there's somewhat of a beauty to making mistakes anyway, because it's just a learning opportunity.
Yeah, and you'll never do it again.
Yeah. So talking about like having attention to detail and having the confidence to maneuver in those sort of situations, how do you think that you learn to have the attention to detail? Because it's something that I think a lot of people strive to have and don't actually know, where do I start in learning this sort of thing. So what do you think that you did in particular?
Yeah, with attention to detail, I feel like that always lacked a little bit for me when I had distractions, and my phone was in front of me with my PwC vacation scheme, and I think that led to me not having good attention to detail. And I think it's really important to create an environment for yourself in order to allow your skills to really thrive when you need it to thrive. So like I said, I put my phone in my bag or away from me, out of sight, when I need to focus on something. Another thing that I do, especially with applications, I think we've mentioned this as well, is reading out loud or printing. I definitely agree with printing things out. When you're on your laptop, your eyes just glaze over words and they miss words, so I think it's important to print things out as well. And I think another part of attention to detail is actually what I did was I did it line by line, and then related it back to the question and actually asked myself, does this make sense? Or what is the point I'm actually trying to make here? Because if I couldn't have an answer for that question, that line could go, that sentence could go. So that helped not only with attention to detail, but keeping my writing more concise.
So that brings us to the end of the video. It has been so lovely to have you on our channel.
Thanks for having me on.
Joining us. But obviously, before you go, do you just want to plug your channel and just tell people what you do, really, and how they can subscribe, where they can find you, etc.
Yeah, sure. So my full channel name is Simranjeet Kaur Mann. There'll probably be a link in the...
there'll be a link.
I don't want to assume.
There'll definitely be a link in the description.
I make content for aspiring solicitors. I also kind of show my day in the life as a trainee, just to provide that honesty and transparency about what it's like. I also talk a little bit about personal development, so all the things here that I've mentioned about confidence, for example, is something that I talk about on my channel as well, and you can find me obviously on my channel, but also on Instagram, and you can message me on Instagram and LinkedIn, and also drop me an email.
So make sure you check her out, subscribe to her channel, subscribe to our channel.
And comment below the top tip that you took away from our interview with Simran, because she dropped loads of gems. So what top thing did you take away? What are you going to implement? What are you going to do differently? What are you already doing that Simran mentioned as well that you're going to keep doing?
And subscribe to the channel, and we shall see you in our next video. Bye.